We're going to take a deep dive over all the essential elements of the blues. That's the chord progressions, the grooves, the piano voicings, licks, and tricks. And all of these things have examples that you can practice at your piano today to get more of that hip bluesy sound into your playing right away. What exactly is the blues anyway? Is it just a 12-bar chord progression like this? Maybe with a blues scale? Are these all sad songs that we sing when our dog dies? Or when our wife runs away with the milkman? Milkman. I was born in 1983. I've never met a milkman. Anyway, when we hear Otis Spann, or Gene Harris, or John Batiste, or Dr. John play a blues, what are they thinking about? Because I think it's way more than just a blues scale over a 3-chord progression. So to me, the essence of the blues all comes from a tradition of call and response. Boo-da, boo-da, boo-doo-da, boo-da, boo-da, boo-doo-da, boo-da, be-da-doo-da, ba-doo-da. So if we take it to the piano. Now the melodies that we're playing include these kind of blue notes, as they're called, and those blue notes give us that bluesy influence that we're looking for. The other thing that this blue note does, though, is it elevates the amount of dissonance that we're kind of willing to accept at the bass line of our song. See, in so many traditional harmonies, a dominant chord like C7, this is considered to be tense, to have a lot of dissonance in it, and when we hear tension, we want to resolve it. Now, in the blues, because we have this heightened awareness of dissonance, we're actually going to accept this dominant 7th chord as our kind of bass foundation. This is going to be our resolved sound. And so because of this, the 3 main chords that we play in the blues, which is the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord, all 3 of them are going to be dominants. And even as we expand this into more complex blues chord progressions, we're still going to come back to the dominant chord as being kind of our home sound. And so this leads us into something really unique about the blues. The sound of the blues is this. Specifically this thing. It's both the minor third and the major third. Now, when we sing the blues, I think it's pretty natural for these phrases we sing to come out as 4-bar phrases. And we don't even really have to change chords in order for us to hear this work, right? Listen to somebody like Muddy Waters. Never changed chords. It was all he needed. But over time, the chord progressions behind the blues kind of took hold and became traditions. We talked about the call and response tradition of the blues, right? So we're going to sing a 4-bar phrase, and then immediately after, we're going to repeat that 4-bar phrase. So that becomes 8 bars, right? And then we said the third time around, we're going to vary it up. We're going to just change it in some way. And so that adds another 4 bars onto the end of it, which gives us our 12-bar blues. And it looks like this. The first 4 bars are all the 1 chord. So F7, 2, bar 3, and bar 4. Now we go to the 4 chord for 2 measures. And now back to the 1 chord for 2 measures. Then to the 5 chord for 1, to the 4 chord for 1 measure, and back to the 1 chord for 2. Most of the time, when somebody calls for you to come play a blues, this is what they mean. But it's not the only option. There are plenty of examples of 8-bar blueses and 16-bar blueses out there. As jazz musicians, we love to add color and extend the harmonies. And so there's a whole tradition of us creating variations on the 12-bar blues forms, and there are a few of them that are really important that I want to go over. Let's look at this tune, Sandu. The tune Sandu is in the key of E flat. So we got to kind of reset. E flat is our 1 chord. Remember, we were on the 1 chord for 4 measures. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we get to the 4 chord here. So far, so good. Our 4 chord is A flat. That makes sense. We're on the A flat for 2 measures, then we come back to the 1 chord for 2 measures. So far, doing okay. Now here at this point, we're supposed to see a 5 chord, right? Which would be B flat. We don't quite see that yet. It's coming over here, right? In the next measure, we've set it up with a 2 from a 2-5. And then our last one here is supposed to be a 1 chord for 2 measures. So one of the most important changes in all of the blues is this one right here. So what we've done is instead of playing our one chord for 4 straight measures, which can be kind of monotonous, right? What we're going to do is we're going to add a 4 chord into the second bar and then just come right back to the 1 chord, just to kind of give us a little bit of variety. This 1 to 4 move here in the second measure has become so common, it's almost blues canon at this point. So if you go to a jam session and you hear them call a fast 4 or a quick change, that's what they mean. The other thing that we're doing here is, I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, but we're adding a 2-5 into the next chord, and then again here we're adding a 2-5. Now not every jazz tune is going to put these same 2-5s in the same place. They might be using 2-5s to get to other chords, but I just want you to notice this idea of taking what would normally just be a single dominant chord and instead making it a 2-5. And the last thing for us to notice is what happens in these last 2 bars. Instead, again, of just camping out on the 1 chord for 2 more measures, we're adding some variety by inserting some extra chords. In this case, a turnaround, a 1, 6, 2, 5. And we said there were 3 chords that are the most important. Now I want you to look at just the root and the 7th of each of these chords. So on F, we have F and E flat, the root and the flat 7. On B flat, we have B flat and A flat. And on C, we have C and B flat. Now by taking 2 notes from each of these 3 chords, we're going to end up with 6 notes, right? And the reality is this B flat exists in both the B flat chord and the C chord. So we're really getting 5 distinct pitches here. And if we sequence those together, we can make a scale out of this, which has F, A flat, B flat, C, and E flat. So just to kind of make the rhythm work out a little bit better, we insert an extra note between the 4 and the 5. So we're going to add a chromatic note here, this B natural, the sharp 4. And when you put all that together, you get the F blues scale. Now, one of the key innovations from playing the blues was this idea that we could use all of the notes from the blues scale over all of the chords. And this might make your eyebrows raise at first if you're used to like comparing, does this note fit into the chord or not, right? So if we take like an F7 chord, but we play the A flat from our blues scale, there's a lot of dissonance in there. But remember, we said one of the core tenets of playing the blues was that we had raised the bar for what we considered an acceptable level of dissonance, and this is distinctively bluesy. So when you're creating these blues lines to sing or to play, think about one of those particular notes from the blues scale and use that as a target to kind of anchor the whole lines. See, look at this one that I showed you earlier. I'm really emphasizing that E flat, right, from our blues scale. So it works great over the F chord and over the B flat, and even over the C. Now we've just kind of set the base level foundation for what we're going to do here, and we need to talk about other notes that we can play outside of this 6-note blues scale. But before we go into that, I want to invite you to become a free member of our community over at Jazz Library. See, in that community, we share a new transcription each week. This week I did It's All Right With Me from the Oscar Peterson Trio. Every Friday, we have a live workshop. We get together on Zoom. And then we have a Discord community where we just talk jazz and share recordings all day. And if you're interested to go deeper and really learn how to play jazz piano, we have a premium membership that has nearly 200 video lessons, each one that breaks down a different fundamental jazz concept. You can learn more about all of that at jazzlibrary.com or just click the link down in the description. But let's talk about blues grooves. Knowing what chords to play is not enough to play a cool blues, right? We got to know how to play them. What style are we going to apply to them? What is our groove going to be? So I'm going to show you a few of my favorites here. The first one is the blues shuffle, and it sounds kind of like this. So the essence of the blues shuffle is an alternating between whatever chord you're playing and the chord that is a fourth away from it. So in this case, our chord is F and it goes to B flat. There's all kinds of ways that you can embellish this blues shuffle. For example, I'm adding this kind of grace note. You can put your hands in different inversions. Now, if we take this swing and blues shuffle and we straighten it out so our eighth notes are straight, we end up getting a rock and roll shuffle. So at this point in history, blues and rock and roll are both kind of happening at the same time, and they're influencing each other. Eventually, rock and roll kind of spins off into its own thing, which we're not going to talk about today. But during this overlapping period, we started to get some really interesting things, like the boogie woogie, where we take something that sounds kind of like our blues shuffle, but we just make it a repeating left-hand ostinato. Maybe something like... Of course, that's a swung version of the boogie woogie, but as things get faster, they start to straighten out a little bit, and you might get a pattern like... Now, if you happen to be in New Orleans during this time when the kind of blues and rock overlap was happening, you would have heard them doing their own unique flavor of the blues, which is all straight eighth notes, and it might be something like... Now, at the same point of time, if you were to go to New York, you would have heard a very different sound, a jazz swing version of the blues. Now it's kind of an upbeat swing with a walking bass, but we very much heard a slow blues with a two feel also. Let's talk about scales and some of the other fun stuff. We've basically limited ourselves so far to only talking about notes that are available within the blues scale, but we definitely don't have to do that, nor really should we. So back here in F, we know we can use the F blues scale. Over this F chord, we can also use any of the four notes of F7. So that gives us an extra note, right? This A, which is not in our blues scale. Now when we get to B flat, our 4 chord, we can still use the blues scale, but we can also use any of these notes that belong to B flat, which gives us another note, the D. And the same thing when we go to C, we can use any of the notes from the F blues or any of the notes from C7. I use the 9, but that's cool too. Now you could take this idea yet another step, and instead of just playing these 4 notes from the chord, you could let yourself play any of the notes that belong to the scale that that chord comes from. So our F dominant chord comes from an F7 scale. You might know that as F dominant scale or F mixolydian, all the same thing. Same thing for B flat, comes from the B flat dominant scale. And the C scale comes from the C dominant scale. But there's one more idea that I think is super important, and it's kind of my go-to be honest, which is to use a different blues scale. So up to this point, we've used the blues scale that belongs to the key. So if we're in the key of F, we use the blues scale that starts on F. There is another scale found on the relative minor. So if we play this exact same scale, but instead we play it in the key of D, to what's called the relative minor, and I'm playing the blues scale from that. This scale also sounds great in the key of F. A really important thing to notice here is that these two options have kind of a different flavor to them. If we play the F scale, here it's kind of spicy, and if we play the D scale, it's much smoother or more mild. I've heard a lot of people talk about kind of merging these two scales together to give yourself what, a 9 or 10 Franken scale that gives you all those blues notes in it. To me, that's not really that useful. One of the things that's really cool about the blues scale is the sound of those 6 notes, the constraint. And so I like to kind of flip-flop between the two different ones. So if we go back to thinking about our blues phrases, maybe my initial blues phrase would be based on this D minor blues scale. Now when I get here to the 5 chord, and I'm going to my 3rd time through where I'm going to create the variation of this phrase, maybe I'm going to switch to that F scale to get something a little bit spicier. I really like the sound of this D minor blues scale in the key of F. I might use it like 60% of the time, actually. Part of the reason for that is that this D minor scale has both the minor third and the major third in it. And I also really like the way that it opens up the opportunity for me to kind of put the period on the end of the sentence with that spicier F blues scale. Way back in the dark ages when I was in high school, this is when we still had wooden teeth and we were burning witches at the stake, I learned from a Jamie Aebersold play-along book. And in that play-along book, Jamie Aebersold talks about how the blues scale, as hip as it is, sounds kind of weird when you play it linearly. I kind of agree with him. Instead, what we want to do is not think about this as a scale where we play things in sequence, and instead think of those 6 notes as a pool of available notes that we can pull from in order to invent our melodies. But it's up to us to do interesting things with it, like creating interesting rhythms and melodic ideas. The next tip I have is that I want us to be really careful with the sharp 4. So remember, all 5 of the original notes that we had came from the chords, but this one doesn't belong to any of those chords. So like if we play it over F, it's got a pretty good clash, right? And over B flat, it's not terrible over the B flat, it's the flat 9, but still, it's got some clash. And then over C7, really bad idea. That's a bad clash. But I hear blues players all the time really like leaning into it. And I think it's obnoxious. Now remember, we have elevated the amount of dissonance that we're willing to accept. And so using this note that is so tense is actually a good idea. It adds a great flavor. We just have to be really careful that we're not using it at a time when we're trying to resolve the chord. My next tip is to remember that the sound of the blues is this, that has the flat 3 and the major 3. Now, if you only play the F blues scale, you will never play the major third. It's not in there, right? So the tip here is that when we get to the 1 chord, find a reason to introduce the major third. Or you could go down, you could go up to the 5th, or even down to the 5th. My next tip is to use what my friends at Open Studio call the bluesy double stop. And this is a technique for adding accents to our blues lines. So if we're playing a line like this, maybe we want to put an accent there in the top of the line. So the way that I did that, right, is on top in my pinky, I just harmonized the notes of the blues scale with the root of the scale. So here on the F blues scale, I'm playing an F in my pinky, and then no matter what other notes I'm playing in the line, I'm just going to harmonize it with that. And we can do this with the other blues scale also. We can anchor it with the D on top. And it works great for that also. This next idea is a side slip where we're going to move chromatically. And I just stole this idea for the blues right out of Monty Alexander's Night Mist Blues. You can't get any better than that anyway. So let's say we're playing through our blues. We're headed to the 4 chord right here. What Monty would do is this. So the side slip up, he's just moving every note up a half step from B flat 7 to B7 and back down. The reason that this works so effectively is because the audience is conditioned to the sound of the 12-bar blues. So when you get to the 4 chord, they're totally expecting this sound, but then you hit them with this anyway, and they're like, whoa, I don't know what that is. Don't worry, we're back home in a comfortable place. So what Monty's going to do to take this to the next level is he's going to implement this change into the melody. So let's say he was soloing and he was coming up with one of those blues phrases that we know he's going to repeat, right? So maybe over the B flat chord, he's got a melody like this going. So now when he side slips, he's going to side slip the melody too. And then bring it back down. And this brings in all kinds of chromatic colors and outside sounds and stuff that nobody ever expects. If you look around the room when he does this, there's stank face everywhere. Now, this side slip thing in and of itself is a really cool technique to practice, but it illustrates a deeper principle to me, which is that you need to establish that you're the one in control of the ship. The thing about the blues scale, the 6 notes in our blues scale, as we've said, are safe notes. You can't play a wrong note. They work over all of the chords. And so by that very nature, the stakes are kind of low. But when Monty does this thing where he side slips outside and goes to a completely different place, we're thrown off like, oh my gosh, we're in danger, right? And then Monty brings us right back. And so that puts Monty in the position of being like, I am the captain now, right? We're the ones along for the ride. Now, I've watched just about every blues video I can find on YouTube, and there's one topic that I am surprised is not covered more often, which is the importance of the sharp 9 chord in the blues. We've talked a lot about how important dominant chords are to the blues. Both the color of the dominant is kind of the sound of the blues, but also we've learned to accept this level of dissonance as our home resolved place of rest, right? And so if we need to create tension in order to drive us back home, to create that gravity back to the 1 chord, we need to use gnarlier chords that have even more tension in them. And one of my favorites to do that with is this. This would be a C7 altered chord, but the important note here is this one. The altered 9, the sharp 9 specifically. There are kind of 2 main reasons why this chord is so darn gnarly. The first one is this interval right here, between the 3rd and the flat 7. This is called the tritone, and it is one of the most dissonant intervals in all of music. Second only to this one, which is called the minor 9th, the most dissonant interval in Western music. And you put those things together, and you get this like super gnarly, but yet satisfyingly cool dominant chord. Now you can hear this thing definitely needs to resolve, right? Yeah, but how satisfying is that? Now, this chord being gnarly tension is kind of hip enough on its own, but remember, we said the sound of the blues is both the minor 3rd and the major 3rd together. And that's exactly what this chord has. It has the minor 3rd, which is also the sharp 9, the same note, and the major 3rd. It has both of them. And so you get that kind of blues flavor also coloring this dominant chord. It is so freaking cool. And if you listen to any blues from like the last 30 or 40 years, Oscar Peterson, Gene Harris, we've talked about Monty Alexander, any of them, they all play this chord all of the time. And in rock and roll, it's super common also. I think it's called the Jimi Hendrix chord. So everything we've talked about so far has been about taking movements and blues scales and chord voicings and applying them on top of the blues form. But also, we can apply these same ideas to any jazz standard that we're playing. Remember how we said that our blues scale applies to the key, not to the chords? Well, we could do this idea if we were playing a tune like How High the Moon in the key of G. We know that we can use our G blues scale or our E blues scale, and it's probably going to work over all of the chords of that tune. This is not a universal truth, by the way. You do have to be a little bit diligent with it. But generally speaking, you can take all of these different blues ideas, the movements, the blues scales, the bluesy double stops, all the little articulations and inflections that we've been playing with, and you can use those to impart a blues flavor onto a non-blues tune. So here in How High the Moon, right, it would end on... To go even deeper creating hip blues solo lines, I've created a 5-minute exercise that you can practice. It's honestly not hard. You'll probably do it the first time you try it. Why is it so hard to talk and play at the same time? But I think the exercise is really good because it trains your ear to develop new melodic ideas. Oh yeah, there's that sharp 9 chord. You can check out that video right here. Take that, Giacomo Torra. No fake playing here.